So that's it, guys. I am officially married. I am a husband now. Still tired from the parties, man. It's been 5 days since the wedding. We partied the week before the wedding, basically. Me and Skitten took some time. She surprised me with a hotel stay. Thought it was from my parents. It was from her so she can give me my wedding gift, which was painting my car, which is one of the sweetest things that she could have done. Remember, we've been talking about her working 2 jobs plus YouTube, and she was doing all that for the wedding gift, which meant a ton. And somebody said from last video, oh, well then what was your wedding gift to her? Well, I paid for the wedding. That was that's what I did. The wedding was the gift. By the time I paid for the wedding and my suit and everything, I was literally dead broke, so it meant a ton. She made sure to save up a ton of money, which is why she's been posting so many YouTube vids, going to work for so many hours, running doubles, and then working 2 jobs on top of that, which was an insane schedule I've been very unhappy about, but at least now I understand why. It is from a place of love and not from a labor of love of work. So I owed her so many apologies from that, but you know, it meant a ton. So ancient Greece in 18 minutes. Most of the vids that are coming out now will probably be 2-parters as we hit that 10-minute threshold for running ads. More so because we haven't been shooting vids, and we need to give things time to get reviewed, and we're struggling a little bit with the backlog. We don't have any, so we need to build back up the backlog on the channel, so be ready for that. Thank you guys for sticking with us throughout all this. You want wedding vlogs, wedding videos, wedding pictures, all that type of stuff, hit the Discord, hit the Patreon. We'll be posting stuff there throughout the week, and we're not really back working hard right now, okay? We're gonna literally wait until next month to do that. We're just getting things started. So, you know, just we're just slowly getting back in the swing of things. All right, let's get into it. Play. Ancient Greece in 18 minutes.
We might think we already know everything about ancient Greece. The Parthenon, the 300 Spartans, and blind Homer's Iliad and Odyssey are familiar to all. Yet there were far more than 300 Spartans. The Parthenon was actually built as a kind of central...
Well, hello, wife.
Stop everything, husband.
What happened?
HQ had her baby.
She did?
HQ had her baby.
Oh my God, really?
Yes.
Dude, I can't take much more stuff. Did you call her?
She just sent me the picture.
Oh my Lord.
You want to see the picture?
Yeah, I want to see the picture.
It's a baby.
Oh my God. I'm going to make y'all wait. Y'all can't see the baby yet. Y'all got to hit HQ shit to see the baby. Oh my goodness. It's huge.
Big ass baby.
The baby's gigantic. Yo, that's insane.
Pretend to regularly scheduled program.
Yeah, no problem, wife. Wow, HQ had the baby. Man, I saw Raphael, the Mans, and HQ. HQ went to the wedding, and she came to the party the day after, and the Mans came to the party after. That man's now a husband, been a husband, and now is a dad a year later. That household is fucking popping. I told y'all there's too much stuff going on. I can't handle it. I can't keep up. This is too much good news. This is one of the best years of my life. And we got to go into 2020. People say always do better the next year you did as the last. I want to turn down next year. There's too much turn up this year. But let's continue. Play.
Bank, and no such unified
Jesus
state
Christ.
as ancient Greece with Athens as its capital ever
I
existed.
can hardly focus on this shit.
The Trojan War was as distant in time to Alexander the Great as the Vikings are to ourselves. So let's try to get our heads around ancient Greece and
What was as far as Alexander the Great? As the Vikings are to ourselves?
as its capital ever existed. The Trojan War
The
was as
Trojan War. Yeah, nigga, them shits wasn't at the same
distant in time to Alexander the Great as the Vikings are to ourselves.
Development went so slow for most of the world for so many hundreds and hundreds of years. And then with the birth of technology, our time frame, things are just popping, dude. You went from boots on the ground warfare to drone strikes within 100 years. And that is just an insane amount of change. You know, my cousin was talking to me about how he remembered when people didn't even all have cell phones. And now everybody's got a smartphone. Everybody's got YouTube. I mean, the world is just increasing so quickly. It's even hard to keep up, you know.
3,716 years ago, the pyramids of Egypt were already standing, and Babylon was the world's first megapolis, home to a prototype of the Tower of Babel. On Crete, however, a mysterious civilization was flourishing. It had three-storied palaces, and all this with no defenses. The Cretans apparently led a relatively peaceful life, admiring flowers, blue monkeys, and beautiful women, walked around topless, while the men preferred loincloths or skirts. The Cretans had a navy and their own writing system, and nobody has yet succeeded in deciphering them. Until one day, on the island of Thera, the modern-day wedding paradise of Santorini, all this ended in the greatest volcanic eruption in European history. Part of Thera sank beneath the waves, presumably giving rise to the myth of Atlantis. Tsunamis 100 meters high and vast ash clouds stretching for thousands of miles around.
Shit.
Crete never recovered from this eruption, and invaders soon swarmed in. The once peaceful island then filled with bronze weapons and tablets written in a new, strange language, which turned out to be the earliest known form of Greek, spoken by warlike tribes.
Look at him, he got like the cow, he chilling like, yeah, man, we came, they was up there chilling with monkeys, bro. We sliced them niggas up.
Which had settled the nearby Greek mainland, building such cities as Thebes, Athens, Mycenae,
hey, shouts out
and
to
Pylos.
Athens, homie.
But these cities already sheltered behind 6-meter walls. Life here was not peaceful at all. A few centuries later, the Greeks themselves explained them with legends of cyclopean builders and were no longer aware that any other civilization had come before them on Crete. By this logic, even the half-bull Minotaur was half Greek. Nobody batted an eyelid at the fact that games with bulls were a purely Cretan form of entertainment.
Hell no, that's ours.
Greeks appropriated everything they met on their way with great virtuosity. In conquering Crete, they had conquered the seas.
That was a lot of way how things got transferred around, though. I mean, you don't kill, skilled workers. You don't tear down important buildings, right? You just take it for yourselves, right?
Marine trade saw them grow even richer. Almost all the inscriptions found among the heaps of gold in the tombs of Mycenae are financial accounts. Mycenae took the lead in the fight against Troy in Homer's Iliad. As recently as 150 years ago, this story was considered a fairy tale, until a millionaire and amateur archaeologist, Heinrich Schliemann, excavated Mycenae, and Troy, a replica of the legendary Trojan horse, now stands here. Archaeologists have indeed found traces of fire and destructions at Troy, but this was accompanied by the decline of virtually all regional settlements.
Gotcha.
Unceasing attacks by barbarian tribes turned the whole Mediterranean into a war zone. The next 400 years were a dark age. Literacy fell into oblivion, leaving us with nothing to read about the events then taking place. Fortunately, what we do have is Homer.
Right.
Everybody has heard about the blind poet, the author of the Iliad and the Odyssey. In actual fact, we don't know what Homer looked like, or when he lived, whether he was one man or many. But even though
by the way, definitely more than one writer. 100% half the stuff is not true, but it's excellent history.
Iliad and Odyssey were written down after the Dark Ages. The daily routines of its characters take us right back to this time. Odysseus, for instance, was only king by virtue of his larger flocks of pigs and goats.
Yeah.
His father slept on the ground in ashes with his slaves. Homer's characters were illiterate and used heads of cattle in place of money. A far cry from Crete and Mycenae with their three-storied palaces. What had happened? The Mycenaean civilization was destroyed by the Dorians, who, though Greek, were totally savage. The earlier population either hid in the mountains or fled to the east. Of all the achievements of the previous civilization, the Dorians left only the essentials, the sailing ship and the potter's wheel. It took a further 4 centuries for them to start adding the most primitive depictions of animals and people. At around the same time, the turn of the 9th and 8th centuries BC, the Greeks in Ionia borrowed a completely new alphabet from their Phoenician neighbors. This bore little resemblance to the linear writing styles of Crete and Mycenae. Do you recognize the modern Greek letters? The fog of Dark Ages had started to clear.
Once you have the ability to write, take notes, add, document history, share knowledge, to be able to grow. Because then how do you teach your children? How do you teach your children's children? If your dads die early or have to go to war, how do you make sure that you have a literate and educated populace to grow with? And that's what happened with a lot of these communities. They were destroyed. These people were killed. Nobody knew anything, because that's how they passed on knowledge, was through just telling you or showing you. And you literally would just have to start over and figure it out again. So the Dark Ages was really just a big stalling period for this entire region. Where other places, like in the Middle East, just continue to grow and thrive, then they didn't at all.
Only here do we begin to recognize ancient Greece, the country that never actually existed. This was no state with an established border or capital, but rather a multitude of distinct and completely independent cities, polises. How did this come about? Greece is a land divided by sea and mountains into separate little parts, of which only a handful was suitable for agriculture. Even grain had to be imported. But why not grow it yourself, over there, across the sea? Thus, the great colonization began. If the first historians are to be believed, Miletus alone founded 90 colonies. The heel of the Italian boot was colonized too, followed by the alphabet that would form the basis for Latin and take over the world. Greek civilization spread from the modern-day Rostov-on-Don to Marseille, laying the foundations of the French wine industry.
Wow.
Fragments of amphorae scattered from Gibraltar to Georgia. These were containers for grain and wine. The latter was diluted with water in proportions of 1 to 3. Only barbarians would drink it neat. For trading purposes, coins appeared. Like the alphabet, these too were borrowed from their neighbors.
And again, you see, like in such a short period of time, you have such huge advancements. But once you share, you colonize, you trade, you know what I mean? Like, you start being able to write down and keep track of things. That's when society can really start to pick up and get more complicated. Without any real organization, these city-states are ultimately isolated. And you will resort to violence, to kind of get the rest of your means at that point. Because there's no other way to really do business without writing.
According to Plato, a few centuries saw the Greeks settled around the Mediterranean like frogs around a pond. And yet, two cities, Athens and Sparta, almost did not participate in colonization. The Spartans descended from the warlike Dorians that had destroyed the Mycenaean civilization. They solved the land issue by conquering their neighbors in the broad, fertile region of Mycenae. The locals were declared helots, something midway between slaves and serfs, and greatly outnumbered the Spartans proper. Sparta
Please talk about the damn slave wars where they would just start fights so they could kill more people. It's just great.
From an ordinary polis into a military camp whose main task was the prevention of any uprising. Things were quite different in Athens. Land hunger there had forced the aristocracy and the people to come to terms. And from this, democracy was born. But first, the tyrants took power. A Greek tyrant did not necessarily terrorize people. Rather the opposite. Typically, he was an aristocrat who had quarreled with his peers, holding out promises of a better life. He used the common people's support to seize power by force. From then on, all his energies were focused on retaining power. The tyrant therefore made no reforms and simply drove any rival aristocrats from the polis. To divert the attention of the populace, tyrants introduced and fostered new festivals and cults. The dissatisfied could perish in the brazen bull. But you can't roast everyone. The tyrants were overthrown, and the suppressed aristocracy attempted to negotiate with the people, giving birth to Greek democracy. If an ancient Greek were to see modern democracy, he would just say one word: oligarchy. Ancient democracy was direct, with no representatives. If a polis had 6,000 citizens, they could all freely participate in the assembly.
Find a hill that all of the citizens can fit on, summon them all there, and let them speak. The reason that worked there, of course, is just because the size of those places was so small. Everything was relative. Oligarchies work in